run down the potential two deep or the starters on opening day and all of your predictions for all the position unit starters?
I can follow along. I won't lead this, but I've certainly got opinions, but it sounds like Steve came in prepared, so I'll defer.
Well, Steve's coming in hot.
I'll predict quarterback, and then you guys can take it from there.
Fair enough.
Steve, where do you want to start? Running back?
I guess just start at the top on offense. Like you said, we got the news this week. It'll be saying starting, and it makes you wonder if there is a Keenholz package that's out there for the red zone. Not sure if they would unveil a gimmicky thing like that against Texas. We all remember how gimmicky it got when they put in Tate Martell a few years ago. There were false starts and fumbles everywhere, and very few touchdowns derived from that. And, of course, Devin Brown boogered himself up against Penn State, getting smacked hard on the goal line in the Devin Brown run package. But I don't know. If I'm in the red zone, I'm going to throw it up to that cat Jeremiah Smith and let him go up and make a play. That's probably the surest way to score a touchdown, or just let the running or the wide receivers run off and hit Max Clear over the middle, wide open in the middle of the field where nobody's going to be. So those seem like the two options to me. But saying and then Keenholz, I think makes the most sense. Obviously,
yeah. The red zone package, as you said, just throw it up to Jeremiah, throw it up to Carnell Tate. I think one of the problems with the red zone package and labeling somebody as the running threat happened to Devin Brown. It's like, well, okay, I've got to be the guy that sticks my nose in there and does stuff that a quarterback shouldn't do, and then you get hurt. Julian saying can keep the ball, like he can pull it and run just fine. So I don't know if they need to do that. But Ryan Day said in terms of like he went through all of the numbers of players that they feel are game ready, and he mentioned 3 running backs, and we know the first 2. And I asked for clarification on the third. He's like, I'm not going to get into that. We'll let Coach Locke get into that. But my belief is that it's Bo Jackson as that number 3 guy.
No doubt.
And I would expect him to play this year too.
So getting ahead of ourselves, is Jeremiah Smith, is he good enough to start?
Maybe.
I'm interested to see how deep they go at receiver, because it didn't sound like Ryan Day was convinced they're going to go all that deep, because he was throwing out numbers in terms of we've got 6 or 7 offensive linemen we like. We've got 3 running backs. Not sure about receivers. I think right now they've got 4, with Bryson Rogers being that 4th. And can they get Mylan Graham to be that 5th? Sounds like I think Steve freshmen are still kind of a bit of ways, although we did see Phillip Bell get that black stripe off.
Yep. So Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis is the starters, with Mylan Graham, Bryson Rogers, and maybe Quincy Porter. Maybe, I don't know. I'm at a loggerhead on that last one, as you said. Guess we'll get into the game and see who plays, but that's the easiest way to construct the 2 deep, is after they've actually played, not necessarily Texas, because a lot of the backups will only see a few plays, but against Grambling, you will see the entire second team out there together, and then you'll probably see the third team out there together too. So, I mean, it'll be a mishmash from probably the first series of the second half on.
Yeah, any freshman you see against Texas, those guys are going to play this year.
Yeah.
And Kevin, did you? Yeah, tell us about the receivers if you want to get to the receivers. I mean, tell us about the tight ends.
Well, the tight ends. I mean, we had a chance here to talk to Keenan Bailey, and he made it sound like there are a lot of tight end coaches hoping to have 1 or 2 good ones. He wants to have 3, 4, 5. 6, and when you have, Max Clare come over via the transfer portal and he did what he did at Purdue, I mean, that's, you've probably got the best all-around tight end that you can have right there. And then you got Cass Merrick, who's like the best blocking tight end. And we haven't even gotten into Bennett Christian or Jelani Thurman or anybody like that at that point. So there's a lot of depth there. We do see Ohio State run a lot of 12 personnel, which is 1 back, 2 tights. So I could see a case of Claire and Cass Merrick being out there as the guys. But, I think that it's a case of they're going to rotate a decent amount because they've got all these guys that are, game worthy. And that's, the important thing, is to try and get these guys in at, in points where they can be productive.
Well, and we saw them play 4 or 5 guys in the playoffs at tight end last year. So they're going to play 4 guys. And then Keenan Bailey even said true freshman Nate Roberts is going to help them win games this year. So you could see another 5 guys out there this year.
They ran 14 personnel in one of the games in the postseason. So, it's certainly not out of the realm. If you could see 4 tight ends in one play, that you're going to see, 4 tight ends in a game.
Yeah, they played 5 against Notre Dame, and not all at once, but they're deep. They lost 2 of those guys, and they replaced them with guys who are just as good, if not better. And then, in terms of the offensive line, I think Ryan Day does not want to name any names, but finally acquiesced and named Austin Searveld as a left tackle and didn't want to go any further than that. I think we can assume Austin Searveld your center and Luke Montgomery your left guard. The right side, Steve, Phillip Daniels seems to be taking the lead there, and Ethan Onionwa is battling at right tackle and maybe right guard with Tigger Shabola, but I don't think he's going to be able to overtake Shabola in just a few practices of fall camp when he's only ever been a tackle.
Yeah, I think if something happens to Carson Hinsman at center, it would be Josh Padilla would be the next guy up, and I think that he's among the trusted. And I think Ethan Onionwa, it sounds to me, is going to be kind of the 6th offensive lineman. So if any of the other 4, Searveld, Montgomery, Shabola, or Daniels goes down, I think Ethan Onionwa goes in there in some regard, and maybe they would move somebody somewhere else or whatever. Maybe Daniel slides inside, Onionwa plays tackle, or vice versa. So, that's kind of how I view it. I think Ian Moore at left tackle, backup. Gabe Van Sickle is a backup guard. And that's probably it for the guys that they really trust to go out there and play. Jake Cook is the first freshman offensive lineman to lose his stripe, and not the big timer from Toledo, Lowe. It wasn't him. So I don't know that Cook is ready to play. That would move him ahead of the twin brothers from St. Ed's, the Armstrong brothers. But again, we don't see enough of practice to know exactly what a rotation there looks like. But I think we get that on pretty strong authority, what the top 7 or 8 there look like.
Yeah, in terms of Doug Shepard asking who's number 7 and 8, I think it just depends on who is needed. Josh Padilla, as you said, they like him, but when Ryan Day says 6 or 7 guys that they trust, is that 7th guy Josh Padilla? Is it Ian Moore? And so I think that's still being worked out. Then also Luke Montgomery can play center as well. So if something did happen to Carson Hinsman, do they want Montgomery to slide over? Do they put in Padilla so that they don't have to move multiple guys over? The good news is they have the flexibility to do all of that, and those guys will get better. He did say he expects to rotate guys against Texas, which is interesting to me because they rotated on the interior last year. I wonder if they rotate on the exterior this year at right tackle.
That is interesting that he's kind of committed to that.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, it didn't happen against Texas because, it was a real close game, and it didn't happen against Grambling because it was not a competitive game. We'll, believe it and see it and dissect it in a postmortem once we see that. And, for like Josh Padilla potentially being number 7 or whatever, he's kind of in that, break glass in case of emergency. You want your backup center to really focus on centering. You don't want to sit there and have him, splitting reps between, guard, tackle, and center and everything else. So you kind of wonder how that breaks out. But, as I said, I just done an interview down in Austin earlier today, and I think this is going to be one of Ohio State's deepest lines in, quite some time. It's just going to be a matter of how quickly do they come together, and, does Phillip Daniels hold that tackle's position? Does Ethan Onionwa does he come in here at the last second, and is he able to, disrupt the line and force his way in. And it's going to be a work in progress. So just because what you see against Texas isn't what you're going to see against Wisconsin, isn't what you're going to see against the team up north. It's going to be constantly changing. And again, while you want your offensive line to be somewhat stable because it's 5 guys having to play as one unit, you need to constantly be evaluating and reevaluating to make sure you got your best 5 out there.
On to the defense, Steve.
Yeah, I think we can pretty much tell you without much reservation, the starting defensive tackles are going to be Caden McDonald and Edric Houston. Houston missed some time early in camp with an apparent knee sprain, but it seems like he is back practicing. It sounds like Kenyatta Jackson will start at one defensive end position, and it looks like the senior Caden Curry will start at the other. The questions kind of come up beyond those guys. Logan George at defensive end had a pretty good spring, but I think he's been a little bit banged up from everything I can determine right now. And that's kind of opened the door, I think, for the North Carolina transfer Bo Atkinson and the converted linebacker CJ Hicks to probably move into the 2 deep at this point. Taiwan Malone, Will Smith Jr., I think, are probably the backup defensive tackles. Jason Moore would be in that mix, but I think Moore has been hobbled a little bit. His foot was in a boot as he was coming off the practice field yesterday. So not sure where that leaves him. You have Eric Mensah, a 302-pound redshirt freshman to help out at defensive tackle. Jarquez Carter is an interesting name. True freshman, very highly rated coming in. And we will see if he gets on the field. Probably not so much for Texas, but obviously the 2 games after that, Grambling and Ohio, they'll have a chance to really air out a lot of the second and third team guys and see who can play when the lights go on and who can't. So that'll give you an idea. I don't know if I've missed anybody that's figures to play. That's a lot of names on the defensive line. They're going to have to replace a ton of production from last year's group. All 4 of the starters are in NFL camps right now and trying to make NFL rosters. So that's going to be a lot to replace up front with the big 4 up front.
Yeah, it sounds like Jarquez Carter might be that number 6 guy right now, and Larry Johnson isn't sure that he'll get on the field, but he's working towards it. And yeah, Edric Houston said he'd be good to go for Texas. And when we talked to him last week, and I said, "So where are you now?" He's like, "I'm not talking about that." But yeah, they've been a little banged up on the interior, which is where they really can't afford to do it. But they have bodies. We'll see what they become.
Yeah, I just nod and agree. I mean, I think that it'll be interesting to see how much Bo Atkinson, how many snaps he's going to be able to get, because I mean, he comes in, with more production numbers than really anybody else. I mean, granted, it was somewhere else and in a different system and under different circumstances, but do you go with Kenyatta and Bo as your first teamers and then bring in Caden Curry, who is kind of your change up as a little bit of a smaller guy, but incredible motor. How do you handle that? And yeah, the concern is going to be on the interior defensive line, just because there is not the depth there. I mean, I think that they would have probably tried to even harder to keep Hero Canoe if they would have known just how thin they were going to be at defensive tackle.
Well, and Larry Johnson said when we talked to him that he wants Caden McDonald to be able to play 25, 35 snaps a game. That's half the game. So they've got to figure out what they're going to do when he's not out there. And I do expect him to play Bo Atkinson on the inside at times and Caden Curry on the inside at times. So they're going to get some defensive tackle snaps out of those defensive ends as well. And then maybe also get some defensive end snaps out of those linebackers, Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles. Just keep an eye on that. We'll see what happens there. As some pass rushing edge rushers.
Before we move on to the secondary, you see down on the bottom ticker there, you can become a member here at the Voice of College Football Ohio State. You got the Block O tier, used to have my Blocko Woody Hayes cap. I don't know what happened to that thing. That was my favorite. You got JT wasn't short. And you could join the Jeremiah Smith tier. We don't give a damn. So sign up today, become a Buckeye member here at the Voice of College Football, and you can read up on all the various benefits. On to the DBs.
Well, we got linebackers.
Oh, got the linebackers. Yes.
Yep. Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese are the starters. Peyton Pierce. And I'm not sure if it's Riley Pettyjohn or Garrett Stover. They said they were 4 deep. I can't figure out if it's Stover or Pettyjohn, but they seem pretty happy with the depth there at linebacker.
Yeah, I wrote about that as well. It's like, well, if you're asking me to put money on one or the other, I'm probably going to say that number 4 is Riley Pettyjohn, just because of the way everybody keeps talking about him, but also we keep asking about him, so they're going to talk about him. But yeah, and I know they'd like Garrett Stover to step up and be a guy on special teams, because they always talk about how fast he is and he can get down the field. But I feel like they like their linebackers, that's for sure.
Yeah, Peyton Pierce would be your third linebacker if they went into 4-3 as opposed to the 4-2-5. Something to remember on Garrett Stover, he was a safety in high school, so he's still kind of learning the position. So, just based on everything I've heard and then trying to make sense of it all, I would probably have Pettyjohn slightly ahead at this point, but that's speculation.
On to the secondary.
Do it.
Cornerbacks. You have Davison Igbinosun, who is one of the 3 returning starters on the defense, along with Caleb Downs at safety and Sonny Styles at linebacker. But Davison Igbinosun at corner. Jermaine Matthews Jr. replaces Denzel Burke at corner. And to start the season, it looks like it'll be Lorenzo Styles Jr. as the nickel corner, doing the slot corner duties. Then the All-American Caleb Downs back at safety, with Jalen McClain most likely, it seems like, as the other safety, and Malik Hartford right there almost bracketed with him. And then the 4th safety, that one is a tough call. Fahim Delane, a true freshman, is probably in that mix, but every time this comes up, they also mention one of the unheralded guys,
Leroy Roker.
Leroy Roker. His name comes up every once in a while, so I'd say that they're probably both pick one of them out of a hat going to play. And the backup corners, Devin Sanchez, a true freshman, Aaron Scott Jr., a backup corner, and Bryce West feels like he would be the backup to Lorenzo Styles Jr. at the nickelback. And I had one pretty good source said that it wouldn't surprise him 4 or 5 games into the season if Bryce West's play snap count goes this way and Lorenzo Styles Jr.'s kind of goes the other way, because Bryce West, it feels like, is really coming on in his second year as a redshirt freshman. Aaron Scott played enough games last year that he is a sophomore. Devin Sanchez, one of the top 5 players in the country in the 2025 class, he is a true freshman and is expected to play. So that's kind of my snapshot of the secondary, but I am definitely open to interpretation on any of that.
I think it's interesting that Ryan Day said they've got 4 corners that they believe can play, and so that would include Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez. One of my questions is, he said we've got 2 nickel backs, so you assume one is Lorenzo Styles. Is he counting when Caleb Downs is playing nickel, or is he talking Bryce West? I know we've seen Bryce West. He was really good on day 3 at outside corner, but we also know he's been playing plenty of nickel. So if they feel good about him as well, I think that's really good. And then talking with Matt Guerrieri this week about Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford, I asked him, so do you consider yourself having 3 starters? And he's like, we don't like that term. Basically, if you're game ready, then that's what they're talking about. So Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain are both game ready. The problem is they kind of play different positions, and the biggest problem for Malik Hartford is he plays Caleb Downs' position. But also Caleb Downs can play any position, so he can move around, and those guys can all move around. So I think you'll see all 3 of those guys on the field, maybe together at times.
Yeah, obviously this, the secondary is going to have the identity of Caleb Downs, and rightfully so. People will sleep on IGB. I mean, I've certainly read the comments, not in this chat, but in other chats about how many pass interference penalties is he going to have or whatever. I mean, you're just going to have handsy moments in the secondary, and sometimes you get away with it and sometimes you don't. And they certainly work with him in the offseason about, getting advantages without maybe getting flagged. So, we'll see at this point. I'm expecting a big season out of Jermaine Matthews just because I just think that even though, it's a case of where I don't think teams are going to necessarily be afraid to throw against IGB. I think teams are going to try and isolate Jermaine Matthews a little bit until Jermaine Matthews gives some reason not to. And then at safety, yeah, I really will be interested in seeing kind of the breakdown of how much McLean and how much Hartford is going to be out there, because I'm a big supporter of Malik Hartford. I think he's really good, but to Tony's point, he largely does the position that Caleb does. And while Caleb can kind of do everything, you want to sit there and do you want to sit there and put Caleb in something that maybe is not his strongest aspect to get Hartford out there? I don't know. It's all above my pay grade.
And in terms of the IGB, the Davis Igbinosun stuff, he talked about his issue last year was basically not turning his head and playing the ball. If he would do that, then he wouldn't be flagged as much. I think there were some issues though where he's grabbing even before the ball isn't necessarily in the air, so that you get some holdings in there as well. But he's been working on it. He and Tim Walton have been focused on it. So he's still going to get called because it's hard to go an entire season without getting a PI, but he's more focused on being where he needs to be at the top end of the route, getting his head around and getting his hands playing the ball rather than just playing the jersey.
We have not had a lot of talk about the specialists, but obviously Jaden Fielding is the kicker. Jackson Corville, a sophomore, is there as the backup. Looks like Joe McGuire is still the punter, although they said Nick McLarty is better well equipped than he was maybe a year ago to go in there and punt as well. So maybe they split that at times. I don't even know how they would go about that, but or why they would, but potentially that's a thing to get them both some kicks. Kick returner, your guess is as good as mine. Mylan Graham, Turbo Rogers, maybe the running backs. I don't know who's back there. I assume Brandon Ennis is going to continue as the punt returner, but when you want to win a game or you need to spark a big one, I think good old number 2, Caleb Downs, would be my choice.
You said spark a big one. A year ago tomorrow, Ryan Day declared Nick McLarty the starting punter and said he'd be the first guy out there. And then he did not finish well, and so he was not, and Joe McGuire was. And so there's still time for that job to flip. But Day did say either of those guys could kick in the game, but Joe McGuire is the incumbent. And Kevin, we have not seen any kick return at all but again, we only saw the first 3 days. So if you want to throw some names out there, feel free. Steve threw some names out there for kick return. I wouldn't mind seeing like a Bo Jackson, something to get him the ball, but I don't know what to expect there either.
I think Ohio State in a lot of ways is content just fielding kicks and taking fair catches, and let's hold on to possession of the ball. I mean, we nearly saw some sudden changes with trying to make plays that weren't there. I mean, obviously we're far removed from the days of Jalen Marshall where it was either going to be a turnover or a touchdown. I don't know. I mean, in terms of kick returners, just don't have a real good, idea. I mean, and I don't necessarily want to be putting like a Carnell Tate or somebody out there, somebody that, every car crash that you can avoid, let's avoid. So, I don't know. do we chart specialists even? Do we even really watch them, or is that when you're still kind of coming back from getting a popcorn and sit down and it's like just awaiting first down?
Yeah, pretty much with
The
Ohio
la-
State. Not much to talk about.
Well, in the last 2 years, they've averaged about one kickoff return per game. So it hasn't been something they've been interested in doing since Emeka Ibuka was a true freshman, and he was really good. And then he got like banged on the head, and they were like, "Well, you can't do that anymore." So, or that was actually Paris Campbell back in like 2018. But Emeka Ibuka, as a freshman, averaged 29 yards a kick, and then it's just since they changed the rule to where a fair catch puts you at the 25, it's just like let's get going and go from there.
That only makes sense, even though I don't agree with that rule. It seems to completely contradict the structure of the field and the game. That you catch a ball at the 1, it goes to the 25. You catch a ball at the 24, it goes to the 25. That makes no sense. Anyway,
I talked with Bill Carollo a couple of years ago at Big Ten Media Days about adopting the NFL's rule. He's like, well, we will look at it. And the Big Ten, he said, the Big Ten could do that if they want, and it doesn't matter if anybody else is doing it. They could go ahead and adopt that rule. But it's like when a non-conference team is coming in, they would have to agree to play to that rule, which they wouldn't.
Yeah, special teams has pretty much been eliminated in regards to not the punting aspect or the kicking aspect, but the coverage and the return units significantly diminished for sure, which I think takes away from the game, but I understand the health factors.
Mm.